Washington state lawmakers are meeting in person today to adopt rules that will allow them to meet virtually during the rest of the season.
After that, regular floor votes in the state Senate will be conducted in a hybrid format with a mix of senators in the chamber and others participating remotely.
Well, joining us to talk about what we can expect from this 105-day session is Jack Miller, professor of political science at Portland State University. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So what are some of the things at the top of the priority list here that Washington lawmakers are going to be discussing in this session?
Well, one of the things about a new session of any legislature is that there's always the hope to start off with momentum on your legislative agenda. And when you're meeting amid a pandemic, when vaccine rollout is happening, of course, healthcare is going to be primary on that. But as your introduction pointed out, there are protesters that are threatening potential violence, and so now they have to actually also just deal with basic security for their own legislative process.
Yeah, given what we saw last Wednesday, I mean, do you think people will pay more attention at the state level, considering the political climate nationally?
Well, I think that's one of the things that is usual is that national politics sucks up all the oxygen in the media, especially over state and local politics. The pandemic has brought home how important these local and state officials are. And so there is now a lot more attention focused on governors and mayors. And of course, with the state legislature meeting under the kind of threat of violence and what could be peaceful protests turning violent, which we've now seen in the national capital, people are starting to see, what happens in Washington, D.C. filtering out to their state capitals. And that's focusing a lot of attention on state politics in a way that is not standard for the American media landscape.
Yes, so we've seen protesters disrupting proceedings in Oregon and certainly in Washington, D.C. last week. Governor Inslee has called in the National Guard to be there today to help with security. I'm curious what happens if the session can't start today because there are disruptions.
Well, that's, it can't start. It means that legislative business is blocked. And that's actually, that's the purpose of these demonstrations. And it's difficult to get the right language. Are they protesters or are they anarchists? Are they domestic terrorists? But one of the things I think is clear is that their goal is to disrupt legislative business, not simply to make their voices heard. I mean, they do want to make their voices heard, but disruption is, I believe anyway, the ultimate purpose of this. And if you can disrupt legislative business and make the government look ineffective, then that gives your extremist movement more momentum. More people get behind you. They start to see that it's working, and they're going to. The hope is that more people will join the ranks of these demonstrators.
Well, moving to Oregon, the House will meet today to swear in new members. So, what do both the House and the Senate balance of power look like in Oregon?
Well, Oregon has unified government with the Democratic Party in control. I actually haven't looked at the final count, but there's a pretty solid majority of Democrats. So that and that's always good news for party in control, because it means that some of their members can vote no on things that are on the party's agenda without worrying too much. In the U.S. House of Representatives, the Democrats' majority has been reduced from the last session, which means that anything the Democrats want to do in the House of Representatives is going to require a lot higher level of unity. So here in Oregon, the Democratic Party has more leeway in terms of party unity. And that's always good news, because there are always members in swing districts that you want to allow them sometimes to vote no to please their constituents and yet still get the yes outcome.
Okay, well, even with that party unity, we will see what happens in this legislative session. Professor Jack Miller, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.